A sharp thud echoed as my sister-in-law dropped the garment bag on my dining table. The zipper rattled, loud enough to make me flinch. She crossed her arms, eyes hard, jaw tight, like she'd caught me committing some kind of crime. "So this is the dress you care about more than my daughter," she muttered, her tone slicing the room in half. I stayed still, fingers pressed against the cool wood. A faint tremor ran through my hand before I curled it into a fist. The morning light fell across the bag, revealing the silhouette of the tailored piece inside. Clean seams, actual structure. None of the uneven hems or loose threads my niece always left hanging. I breathed slowly, steadying my pulse. I heard soft footsteps before my niece appeared at the doorway, holding a bundle of thrifted fabric to her chest. Her eyes searched mine with a mix of hope and hurt. "I could make something better if you'd just let me try," she whispered. My chest tightened. She deserved kindness, but this wasn't the place for gentle illusions. Not when every camera at the event would be trained on me. Not when my name, my work, my credibility, all of it would be on that stage. "I can't," I said quietly. Her face fell, and my sister-in-law let out a harsh laugh. "You really think you're too good for us now?" The words hit harder than she expected. I felt my throat stiffen, heat creeping up my neck. I wanted to walk away, but my niece's disappointed breathing filled the silence, anchoring me to the spot. The room felt tight, as if walls had shifted closer without warning, and somewhere beneath it all, a slow dread began to form. The kettle clicked off with a dull snap just as I rested my palms on the counter. Steam curled upward, soft and slow, the only gentle thing in the room. I watched it fade while my breath stayed tight in my chest. My niece's footsteps had vanished down the hallway, leaving behind a thin trail of silence that felt heavier than any argument. A chair scraped suddenly. My sister-in-law slid into it, elbows planted wide as if she owned the space. "You know," she said, tapping one manicured nail against the table, "some of us don't measure our worth by fabric and stitching." Her voice carried a mocking sweetness that made the back of my neck prickle. I poured water into my mug, hands steady even as something inside me twisted. I wasn't shaking from shame. It was something sharper, something tired. She kept going. "It must be exhausting," she mused, "being so obsessed with looking important." She leaned back, crossing her legs. "My child only wanted to feel close to you, but I guess you're too busy chasing applause to care about that." The jab landed with a thud inside my ribs. I swallowed hard, tasting bitterness at the back of my throat. "This event affects my livelihood," I said, keeping my tone clipped. "I need to look professional. That's not vanity. That's survival." She rolled her eyes so dramatically the motion almost whistled. "Survival," she repeated, scoffing. "What a dramatic word. It's a dress, not a battlefield." Her dismissal pressed into me like a weight. The kitchen lights hummed overhead, bright enough to sting my eyes. I felt a pulse of anger flicker low, unwanted but impossible to ignore. And just when I tried to take a breath, my phone buzzed on the counter. "You're not seriously ignoring me now, are you?" my sister-in-law said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the quiet. I picked up the phone without looking at her. The screen lit up with a message from my manager, confirming your final rehearsal time. Press photographers will be present. My stomach tightened. Press, cameras, headlines, the kind of exposure that could shift my entire trajectory if I presented myself well, or sink me if I didn't. A faint pressure formed behind my eyes. When I glanced up, she was smirking. "Work calls," she said mockingly. "Of course it does." I set the phone down slowly. "This opportunity isn't small," I said. "It could open doors. I need to look put together." She scoffed. "You're plus size, dear. No dress is going to magically fix what people already judge. Might as well let my daughter feel proud for once." The words hit with a force I wasn't prepared for. A cold, cutting blow that made my breath stutter. I gripped the edge of the counter, nails digging into the wood. Her expression didn't shift. She didn't even blink, as if she hadn't said anything cruel at all. For a moment, I heard only the faint hum of the refrigerator. A numb quiet settled in my ears, swallowing her presence whole. Then footsteps approached softly, my niece again, hovering near the doorway, holding the thrifted fabric with small, hopeful hands. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The disappointment in her posture was louder than words, and for the first time that morning I felt something inside me bend. The hallway outside the kitchen was dimmer, washed in that muted afternoon light that makes everything look slightly blurred. I stepped out of the doorway, needing air, needing space. The framed photos along the wall gleamed faintly, old milestones, old victories, moments where I had fought my way upward piece by piece until I carved out a career with my own hands. I rested my fingertips on one of the frames, feeling the cool glass under my skin. A tiny tremor pulsed through my knuckles before I let my hand fall. Behind me, her voice carried through the doorway. If you weren't so full of yourself, none of this would be an issue. The words floated out casually, almost bored, but they still hit with an unnerving precision, like she knew exactly where the bruise was forming and pressed deeper. My niece stepped closer, clutching her bundle of fabric tighter. "Auntie, I just wanted to make something special for you," she said, her voice cracking at the edges. "Mom says you think I'm not good enough." My breath caught. Not good enough. That wasn't what I had said, but it was exactly what she had been taught to hear. I knelt slightly to meet her eyes. "Sweetheart, your creativity is amazing, but this event is different." I tried to keep my voice steady, but she backed away before the words could land. From the kitchen came a scoff. "See? You can't even say it without sounding like you're talking down to her." A sharp pressure spread across my chest, tight and slow, like a warning flare. I straightened, jaw clenched. The moment felt fragile, thin ice beneath a single step. Somewhere deep inside, something began to crack. A drawer slammed somewhere in the kitchen, the sound sharp enough to jolt through the hallway. It broke whatever fragile calm I had left. I turned back and saw my sister-in-law rummaging loudly, each clatter a pointed accusation. She didn't look up, but her voice carried with a cold clarity. "You're always so dramatic. One little dress and suddenly you're the victim." I felt the heat crawl up my spine, slow and deliberate. My niece stood frozen near the doorway again, eyes glossy, shoulders slumped as if waiting for the next blow. Not physical, but emotional, the kind that leaves marks anyway. I stepped forward carefully. "I never said she wasn't talented," I said. "I said I can't risk my image for this event." She snorted. "Image, image, image, that's all you ever talk about. Maybe try caring about people instead." My breath stilled. The cruelty wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. It was precise, like she'd sharpened the sentence before throwing it. My niece flinched at the tone, then looked down at her fabric bundle, fingers twisting the material until it wrinkled. "I just wanted you to be proud of me," the girl whispered. The words caught me off guard. They slipped under my ribs in a way nothing her mother had said could. I opened my mouth, searching for the right language, something soft but firm, but my sister-in-law cut through the moment with a disdainful sigh. "Don't bother," she said. "She already knows where she stands with you." Something snapped. Quiet, invisible, but definite. Not anger, something deeper. A realization I had been avoiding for far too long. A tight pull gathered beneath my ribs as I steadied myself against the counter. My fingers pressed hard into the edge. The faint bite of the wood grounding me when my breath refused to settle. My niece shifted her weight, her sneakers making a soft scuff on the tile, a tiny sound that somehow cut deeper than her mother's voice. I straightened slowly. My sister-in-law leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, chin lifted with a quiet arrogance. "If your career is really that fragile," she said, shrugging, "that's not our fault. Maybe you're not as impressive as you think." The words didn't land like a slap. They landed like truth twisted into cruelty, a deliberate hit, crafted to wound. My niece looked between us, her throat bobbing as she swallowed. "Auntie," she murmured, "I can fix things if they look bad. I can redo seams. I can try harder." The desperation in her voice cracked something in me. Not anger, not guilt, something older. And the memory of every time I'd stood on a stage fighting to be taken seriously, fighting twice as hard because of my size, my age, my place in rooms that weren't made for women like me. I walked toward her, each step slow, deliberate. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "you should never have to earn love by proving your worth. Not to me, not to anyone." Before she could answer, her mother pushed off the fridge with a sharp scoff. "There you go again," she said, "turning everything into some dramatic life lesson. Just admit it. You think you're better than us." The air shifted, heavy, still, and inside that silence, a dangerous clarity began to take shape. The kitchen chair scraped sharply as I pulled it out and sat down, the legs dragging against the tile with a low, tense sound. It startled my niece, making her flinch before she drew the fabric bundle closer to her chest. My sister-in-law watched with a smug tilt of her head, as if she believed she'd already won something. I rested my hands flat on the table. The surface was cool, steady. My voice, when it came, wasn't raised. It didn't shake. It was simply tight enough to carry the weight of every moment that had led here. "You've been twisting my decisions for years," I said quietly. "One bag, one wedding plan, now one dress. You turn everything I do into a character flaw." She blinked, surprised that I wasn't shrinking. "I'm just honest," she snapped. "Sorry you can't handle that." I held her gaze. Honesty doesn't require cruelty. My niece shifted again, her breath trembling. "I thought making you something would make you happy," she whispered. "Mom said you'd be grateful. She said you needed it." My jaw locked for a moment. Needed it. A manipulation dressed up as bonding. I leaned toward her gently. "Sweetheart, your creativity is something to be proud of, but adults shouldn't use you to fight their battles." Her eyes widened slightly, as if no one had ever said that to her before. My sister-in-law slammed a spoon into the sink, water splashing upward. "How dare you accuse me of using my own child?" The clang echoed through the room, sharp, metallic, and final, and in its wake, the truth I had been circling finally solidified inside me. The living room felt colder than the kitchen, as if the air had thinned the moment I stepped inside. The afternoon light came through the blinds in narrow, uneven stripes, cutting across the carpet in pale bands. I stood near the window, the quiet pressing against my ears, while my niece hovered near the doorway, unsure whether to follow. I could still hear her mother muttering in the kitchen, metal clinking, cabinet doors shutting too hard, each noise a reminder of the storm brewing behind me. I didn't move. I needed the stillness, the distance, a place where her voice couldn't scrape at me. My niece finally stepped closer, her shoes brushing softly against the carpet. "Did I ruin everything?" she asked, her voice small, raw. The question pierced deeper than anything her mother had thrown at me. I turned toward her, my chest tightening with a slow ache. "No," I said, shaking my head. "You didn't ruin anything." She looked down at the fabric in her hands, twisting it nervously. "Mom says you only care about looking perfect, that you don't like handmade things, that you're embarrassed by me." The pain that swept through me was sharp, instant. "That's not true," I said. "None of that is true." She nodded but didn't look convinced. A thin silence stretched between us, fragile as thread. In the kitchen, her mother let out a loud scoff, as if reminding us she was still listening. I drew in a slow breath, feeling something settle low in my stomach. This wasn't just about a dress. It hadn't been for a long time. This was about a pattern I had let grow unchecked. "Are you two done whispering?" her mother called out, her footsteps growing louder as she walked toward the living room. The tone was sharp, irritated, like she couldn't stand a second where she wasn't in control of the room. I straightened, turning just enough to meet her eyes. She stood with her hands on her hips, lips pressed together in that familiar, judgmental line. "I'm tired of being painted as the villain," she said. "I'm the only one trying to teach my daughter real values." My niece shrank behind me, fingers tightening around the fabric she held. I kept my voice low. "Real values don't come from forcing children into situations to make yourself feel right." She let out a laugh, short, bitter. "There you go again, acting superior." "I'm setting boundaries," I said. "There's a difference." She stepped forward, pointing at the fabric in her daughter's hands. "She worked hard on that. She stayed up late sketching ideas, but you can't see past your ego." My niece's breath hitched at the word ego. I felt her inch closer, as if bracing for something. I looked at her mother steadily. I see her effort. I always have. "But this event impacts my career. If I show up looking unprofessional, it affects my credibility." "You're just afraid," she snapped. "Afraid people will judge your body. Afraid you won't measure up, and you're taking it out on her." The hit was clean and deliberate. My chest tightened, breath catching unexpectedly. My niece's eyes widened at her mother's cruelty, and in that rising silence, I realized the line had finally been crossed, so clearly I could no longer ignore it. A slow throb settled behind my ribs, the kind that makes every breath feel slightly uneven. I stood still, letting her words hang in the air long enough to feel their weight. My niece's small fingers brushed the back of my arm, a quiet plea for steadiness, and that touch alone kept me anchored. Her mother folded her arms, satisfied with the wound she'd delivered. "See," she said, "you freeze the second someone tells the truth." I exhaled carefully. Insulting my body isn't truth. It's cruelty. She shrugged without remorse. "Reality hurts." My niece stepped forward, voice trembling. "Mom, stop, please." But her mother didn't stop. She moved closer, invading the space between us. "Maybe if you were more confident," she continued, "you wouldn't need designer bags and tailored dresses to feel valid." Heat flared under my skin. Not anger, but something steadier, sharper, a recognition of a boundary I had let her cross too many times. "I work hard," I said quietly. "I earn what I buy. I show up prepared. That's not insecurity. That's professionalism." She scoffed. "You call it professionalism. I call it vanity." My niece's breath hitched again, and she looked up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. The hurt on her face didn't come from me refusing the dress. It came from watching her mother tear into me like this, using her as both shield and weapon. I finally turned fully toward her mother, feeling the words settle into place before I spoke them. "This isn't about the dress. It never was." The room went still. My niece loosened her grip on the fabric, and a corner slipped through her fingers, brushing the carpet with a faint whisper. That tiny sound broke the standoff more than any raised voice could. I watched it fall, soft and uncertain, just like she was, caught between loyalty and confusion. Her mother didn't notice. She was too busy glaring at me, jaw tight, eyes bright with the thrill of confrontation. "Of course it's about the dress," she snapped. "Everything started because you refused her." I shook my head slowly. "No. Everything started because you turned my refusal into a moral failure." She opened her mouth to argue, but I continued, my tone steady. "You've been doing it for years. Every choice I make, you call it shallow, selfish, or dramatic. You did it when I bought one nice bag. You did it when I planned my own engagement party. And now you're doing it again, using your daughter's feelings as a weapon." My niece's breath wavered beside me. Her mother's face tightened, a flicker of something defensive crossing her features before she smothered it with anger. "That's ridiculous," she said. "I'm teaching her not to be like you." The words landed with a hollow thud. My niece flinched, eyes darting to me as if waiting to see whether I would break. I didn't. Instead, I bent down slowly, picking up the fallen piece of fabric. The material was thin, uneven, edges frayed from rushed scissors, but it was warm from her hands, warm with hope she never should have had to carry. When I straightened, her mother's expression had shifted, tight, wary, sensing the shift she hadn't intended, and the room felt different now, quieter, sharper, like we were finally stepping into the truth neither of us could avoid anymore. A slow breath drifted out of me, uneven at the edges, the kind that slips free before you can steady it. My niece watched the rise and fall of my chest like she was tracking a storm she didn't understand. Her mother crossed her arms tighter, sensing something shifting, but not yet recognizing the shape of it. I held the fabric gently between my fingers. "This was never about her not being good enough," I said. My voice came low, measured. "It was about you telling her that my choices were insults." Her mother scoffed. "You always think I'm the enemy. Maybe you should ask why." I didn't flinch. "Because you treat my boundaries like they're personal attacks." The words hung in the room, heavier than anything we had said before. My niece's voice cracked softly. "Mom, you told me she'd wear it if she cared." Her mother stiffened at the confession. "I said it because it's true." "It's not," I said, turning toward her. "I care, but caring doesn't mean sacrificing my career to make you feel righteous." That struck something. A faint flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Quick, defensive, almost invisible, but I saw it. I felt the shift. My niece stepped closer until she was right beside me. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The way she leaned ever so slightly in my direction said enough. Her mother noticed the movement. Her lips parted, surprise sliding into a flash of indignation. "So now you're turning her against me?" "No," I said. "You're doing that all by yourself." The room went still again, but not like before. This silence had gravity, a pull none of us could step back from now. I walked to the sofa and set the fabric down carefully, smoothing one edge with the back of my hand. The motion was slow, almost ritual, giving all of us a moment to breathe. My niece watched every movement, her eyes tracing the way my fingers flattened the wrinkles she had created in her nervousness. Behind me, her mother exhaled sharply, not a sigh, something harsher. "So that's it?" she said. "You get to be calm and noble while I'm the monster?" I turned, leaning lightly on the arm of the sofa. "This isn't about labels," I said. "It's about what your daughter has been taught to expect from me." My niece's voice trembled. "Mom said you never think anything we do is good enough." The confession cracked open a truth neither of us had wanted to face. I felt the weight of it settle low in my chest. Her mother's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Surprise, then embarrassment, then anger, all flashing like a flicker of heat. "I was trying to protect her from disappointment," she snapped. "Someone had to." "No," I said softly. "You were protecting yourself from being wrong." Her jaw locked. A flush crept up her neck, bright and quick. My niece tugged at my sleeve, small fingers curling into the fabric. "I just didn't want you to look bad," she whispered. "Not in front of all those people." The innocence in the statement hit harder than any accusation. She wasn't seeking validation. She was seeking responsibility for feelings that were never hers to carry. I felt something inside me settle. Not anger, direction. A faint rustle came from the fabric on the sofa as my niece's hand slipped away from my sleeve. The soft sound felt almost out of place in the thick tension that had settled over the room. Her mother stood rigid, arms crossed, the rise and fall of her breathing sharp enough to notice. I stepped a little closer to my niece, lowering my voice. "You should never feel responsible for how I look on that stage," I said. "That's my job, my choice." She blinked hard, fighting the sting in her eyes. Her mother shook her head, scoffing under her breath. "So now you're the martyr." Wonderful. But something in her tone had changed. It lacked the confidence she wielded so easily before. I watched her shift her weight, fingers tapping against her arm as if she needed something to hold on to. "You keep twisting things," she said. "I just want her to feel proud." My niece turned toward her slowly. "I am proud," she whispered, "but I don't want to make her look silly. I don't want people laughing at her." The sentence hung between them like a dropped ornament, delicate, shattering on impact. Her mother flinched. It was tiny, barely there, but it happened. I held her gaze. "She understands more than you give her credit for, and she deserves honesty, not pressure." A long silence stretched across the room, not tense, not angry, just revealing. For the first time since the argument began, her mother's eyes wavered, uncertainty rippling beneath the surface, and the balance in the room shifted again, this time in a way none of us expected. My sister-in-law stepped forward so abruptly that the carpet shifted under her heel. The sudden movement startled my niece, who instinctively moved closer to me, her shoulder brushing my arm. That tiny contact, the way she leaned without thinking, sent a ripple through the room strong enough to stop her mother mid-step. She lowered her hand slowly, uncertainty flickering again. "I didn't mean for her to think people would laugh at you," she said. The words weren't soft, but they weren't sharp either. They hovered in a strange middle ground, like she wasn't sure how to stand without the shield of hostility. I studied her quietly. "But she did think that," I said, "because she listens to the way you talk about me." My niece bit her lip, twisting the hem of her shirt now instead of the fabric on the sofa. "You always make it sound like she does everything wrong," she said, her voice a fragile tremor. "But she works hard, and she's important." The tremor in her voice cracked something open between us, something her mother didn't seem prepared for. "I know she's important," her mother said, defensive again, but softer at the edges. "I just don't want her thinking she's less than you." The implication stung. "She's not less," I said. "She never was. But when you turn my choices into attacks, she ends up caught in the middle." My sister-in-law's jaw tightened, but not with anger, more like she was weighing something she didn't want to admit. A heaviness settled in her posture, shoulders dipping a fraction. My niece took one step toward her mother, then looked back at me with wide, conflicted eyes. We stood there, three people tangled in a truth none of us had fully named yet, while the quiet stretched long and thin, waiting for someone to finally break it. The silence stretched so long it felt like a fourth person in the room, breathing between us, thickening the air. My niece stood halfway between her mother and me, her hands hovering uselessly at her sides, as if she didn't know where they belonged. Her mother glanced at her, then at me, and for once she didn't seem certain whose side she was supposed to push her toward. I lowered myself onto the sofa slowly, palms pressing against the cushion to steady the weight in my chest. "No one here is trying to win," I said softly, "but someone here is hurting." My niece looked down at her sneakers. "I didn't want to make anyone mad," she whispered. "I just wanted us to be together. Mom said if you wore my dress on stage, it would make people think we're close." The words hit like a cold drop of water sliding down my spine. It wasn't just pressure. It was positioning, image-making of a different kind. Her mother inhaled sharply. "I didn't mean it like that," she said, but even she didn't sound convinced. "You meant well for her," I said. "I know that, but meaning well doesn't change the impact." My niece's eyes lifted toward her mother, searching for something, truth, maybe, or reassurance. Her mother opened her mouth, then closed it again, as if the right instinct and the wrong instinct were fighting inside her. She finally spoke, her voice unsteady. "I just wanted her to feel included, to feel like what she makes matters." "It does matter," I said. "It just can't matter more than her confidence, or my career." A tremor passed over her mother's face. Not anger this time, something far more rare in her, a flicker of recognition, and when she looked at her daughter again, something in her expression softened, almost imperceptibly. My niece took a hesitant step toward her mother, then stopped halfway, her fingers twitching like she wasn't sure whether to reach out or retreat. The movement was so small, so unsure, it made the room feel even more fragile. Her mother noticed. I saw her chest rise, then pause, as if she didn't know how to respond to her own child's uncertainty. "I didn't mean to make her feel pressured," her mother said finally, voice rough at the edges. I wanted her to have something to be proud of." My niece looked up. "I'm proud when you say you're proud," she whispered, "not when you make me prove it." The sentence slid through the space between them like a blade wrapped in gentleness, soft but impossible to ignore. Her mother blinked, taken aback by the simple truth coming from someone so young. I leaned forward slightly. She doesn't need a stage to matter, and I don't need a handmade dress to love her. Those two things can exist without conflict. Her mother swallowed, her posture shifting, shoulders dropping by a fraction. I thought, if she made something for you, she'd feel closer, like family. "We're already family," I said, "but closeness can't be forced, not through guilt, not through sacrifice." My niece stepped closer to her mother, this time without hesitation. She touched her mother's arm tentatively, like testing whether the moment would break. It didn't. Her mother covered her hand lightly, a small, unsure gesture that carried more sincerity than anything she'd said all afternoon. For the first time, it felt like all three of us were standing on the same side of something. Quietly, cautiously, but undeniably. A soft creak came from the floorboard near the coffee table as I shifted my weight. The sound rippled through the quiet, subtle but grounding, like the house itself was exhaling after holding tension too long. My niece stayed close beside her mother now, their hands linked loosely, fingers still unsure but connected. Her mother glanced at me, and for the first time her expression wasn't defensive or triumphant. It was searching. "I may have pushed too hard," she said. The admission came out uneven, like the words hadn't been spoken aloud in a long time. My niece squeezed her hand. "I don't want to fight," she whispered. "I just wanted everyone to be happy." A slow ache spread through me, not sharp, not biting, but deep, the kind that comes from realizing how much a child absorbs without understanding. I stepped closer, careful not to break the fragile balance forming in the room. "You didn't do anything wrong," I told her gently. "You followed what you were taught, but you don't have to carry our tension. That's not your job." Her mother looked down at her daughter, eyes softening around the edges. "I didn't realize she felt that way," she murmured. "You couldn't see it," I said. "You were too busy trying to prove something on her behalf." The words weren't meant to wound. They were simply true. Her mother nodded once, slow and thoughtful. "Maybe I was," she said. "Maybe I wanted her to feel valuable, because I didn't always." The confession settled over the room, unexpected and raw. My niece leaned into her mother's side, not out of fear, out of comfort. And for the first time that day, the air felt less like a battlefield and more like a doorway opening, hesitant but real. I lowered myself into the armchair across from them, the cushion sinking softly beneath my weight. The slow movement felt intentional, a way to ground the moment instead of rushing past it. My niece watched me sit, her expression gentler now, like she was testing whether the calm would hold. Her mother smoothed a wrinkle in her sleeve, a nervous gesture that didn't match her usual confidence. "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "All the little comments. The teasing. I thought you brushed it off." I met her eyes steadily. "I learned to, but it doesn't mean it didn't cut." A faint wince crossed her face. She looked at her daughter, who was pressing the fabric to her chest again, holding it like something precious. "I didn't want her growing up thinking she wasn't enough," she said quietly, "so I pushed her to try, to be bold, To show up. My voice softened. Showing up shouldn't require sacrificing someone else's boundaries. My niece nodded slowly, understanding more than we realized. It shouldn't make people scared, she added. Her mother's breath hitched at the word scared. I leaned forward, elbows resting on my knees. I wasn't scared of the dress, I said. I was scared of disappointing people who hold my career in their hands. I was scared of being judged before I even spoke. Her mother blinked, a flicker of realization sparking behind her eyes. Because of how harsh people can be. Yes, I said, especially toward women who don't fit what they expect. My niece stepped toward me and placed the fabric gently on my lap. You don't have to wear it, she said. I just wanted you to know I tried. I touched the edge carefully, feeling the uneven hem beneath my thumb. And I see that, I whispered. The room felt softer. Not healed, but no longer breaking. Can we start over? My sister-in-law asked. The words came out low, almost reluctant, as if she had to push them through a tight place inside her. My niece and I both looked up, surprised by the tone, less sharp, less armored. Something in her posture had shifted too. Her shoulders weren't squared anymore, and her fingers weren't curled into fists. I kept my gaze steady. Start over how? She hesitated, chewing lightly at the inside of her cheek. By not assuming the worst of each other. She glanced at her daughter, then back at me, and by letting her create without turning it into pressure. My niece leaned closer, her voice a soft thread. I just wanted to make something nice. I didn't mean for it to be a big deal. I reached for her hand gently. Your creativity is beautiful. It deserves to grow at its own pace, not be thrown under a spotlight you didn't ask for. Her mother nodded slowly. I should have thought about the stage, about what it meant for you. She took a breath, shaky but sincere. And I shouldn't have used your size against you. That wasn't fair. The apology settled between us with a fragile dignity. My niece's shoulders eased, her grip on my hand relaxing just enough to release the tension that had been holding her still. I appreciate that, I said quietly. And I want her to keep making things. I just can't wear them somewhere that defines my livelihood. Her mother's eyes softened, the defensive spark fading. Then maybe she can make something for another time. Something just for you two, no audience. My niece's face brightened, not with expectation, but hope. The kind that felt light instead of heavy. I folded the fabric slowly and set it beside me on the sofa, smoothing one corner with my thumb. The motion felt deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if laying the tension down with it. My niece watched every movement, her breathing steadying for the first time since the argument began. She eased onto the cushion next to me, leaving only a small space between us. Her mother stayed standing for a moment, unsure where she belonged, then quietly lowered herself into the armchair across from us. The shift was small, but it changed the room, turned it from a battleground into something softer, something teachable. My niece nudged the folded fabric with one finger. Maybe I can make something. Not for the stage, she said. Maybe just something we wear at home, or when we hang out. I smiled gently. I'd love that. The relief in her eyes was immediate, warm and real. Her mother exhaled, the sound heavy but no longer sharp. You two could make a day of it, she said. Go pick out real fabric, learn how to read patterns, do it properly. My niece's face lit up. You'd teach me? She asked. If you want me to, her mother said, but only if it stays fun, not a test. The words landed with a quiet sincerity that surprised all three of us. I nodded. That sounds like a bonding experience that doesn't cost anyone their career. Her mother gave a small, tired laugh, the first genuine one she'd let out all afternoon. The fabric sat between us on the sofa, not a symbol of conflict anymore, but a starting point, a new one. A sliver of late afternoon light shifted across the floor as the sun dipped lower, and my niece reached out, letting her fingers trail through the warm stripe on the carpet. The soft glow touched her knuckles, making them look delicate, almost hopeful. She looked up at me with a quiet smile, tentative, but real. Her mother rested her elbows on her knees, leaning forward slightly. "I know I can be intense," she said, choosing the word carefully. "I just didn't want her thinking her work didn't matter." "It matters," I said, "but so does context, and timing, and truth." She nodded, absorbing it this time instead of fighting. I guess I made it about me without realizing it. My niece leaned softly into my side. "I don't want to make things that scare you," she said. "I want to make things that make you happy." A warmth spread across my chest. Not sharp, not painful, just steady. I draped my arm around her shoulders. "And you do," I said. "You always have." Her mother shifted, her voice gentler now. Maybe we all needed this. Not the fight, but the clarity. The room felt lighter, not fixed, not perfect, just open in a way it hadn't been before. My niece picked the folded fabric back up and traced the uneven seam with her fingertip. "Maybe next time," she said shyly. "I can show you ideas first, and we can pick things together." "That sounds perfect," I said. Her mother smiled at her, a small, honest curve of the lips. "And I'll help you learn the things you want to learn, not the things I want you to prove." The light on the carpet shifted again, longer now, softer. Like the room itself was exhaling. The faint hum of the refrigerator filled the quiet, a low, steady sound that wrapped around the room like a soft blanket. My niece settled deeper against my side, her shoulder warm against me. Her mother leaned back in the armchair, fingers tracing the seam of the cushion. A small, absent gesture that suggested her thoughts were finally slowing down. I watched my niece run her hand along the folded fabric again, this time without shame or fear, just curiosity, just affection. The uneven stitches didn't feel like flaws anymore. They felt like a child's earnest attempt to connect, uncluttered now by pressure or expectation. Her mother cleared her throat lightly. "You know," she said, eyes drifting toward the window, "when I was your age, no one encouraged me to make anything. Everything I tried got judged or dismissed. I didn't want that for you." My niece looked up at her. "You don't have to push me so hard," she said. "Just be with me." Something soft cracked across her mother's face, an expression I hadn't seen on her before. Not regret, not guilt. Something more human, more reachable. She nodded. "I can do that," she whispered. I smiled gently. "You both deserve better than perfection. You deserve connection." Her mother's eyes met mine. The defensiveness was gone. The sharpness was gone. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for earlier, for the comments, for all of it." The apology wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic. It was real, and that made it land with a weight that mattered. My niece reached across the space between us and touched her mother's knee, a simple gesture that bridged the last of the distance. And in that silence, warm, steady, honest, we all breathed a little easier. The folded fabric slipped a little on my lap as I shifted, the edge sliding just an inch before settling again. That tiny motion drew all three of our eyes, as if it carried the last unspoken piece of the moment. My niece reached out instinctively, steadying it with her palm, her touch gentle and sure. I placed my hand over hers, the warmth between us quiet but certain. "You made this with love," I said softly. "That's what I'll remember." Her face blossomed with a shy smile, small but genuine in a way that needed no applause. Across from us, her mother let out a slow breath, the kind that releases more than tension. She leaned forward, resting her forearms on her knees. "I want us to do better," she said, "not just for her, for all of us." My niece tucked herself closer to my side. "We can," she said. "We can try." I brushed a loose thread along the seam, careful not to pull it. "Trying is enough," I murmured. "Trying is the part that counts." Her mother nodded, eyes softening with something almost tender. "I didn't realize how much I was projecting onto you," she said. "Both of you." I met her gaze without hesitation. "We grow when we see it. That's what matters." My niece lifted the fabric again, holding it between us like a gentle truce. "We can pick something better next time," she whispered. "Something we choose together." I smiled. "I'd like that." The light in the room dimmed a little more as the day settled, wrapping us in a quiet that felt earned, steady, warm, and soft around the edges. And for the first time in a long while, the space between us felt whole.